If they running their mouth, then they looking for trouble. Ran right up in the knowledge, now they back in the huddle. See, they know we can fight. New content every week. Me and Dr. Clyde keep on bringing the heat. Now they know that we driven, and they know we ain't quitting. Yoshi and Dr. Winner keep on bringing the energy. Unity. See, they know we ain't stopping, and they know they got problems, and they ran out of options. If you know we got a problem, can't let it go unsolved. Bring back learning, Afrocentric history, we see tomorrow. Karma's karma, I say what I say, I hear underwater. Till I see I fall off, then I bring y'all up on note. I'm back up on my Clyde winners, 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 Clyde winners. Divine winters, Clyde winters, mind bender, Clyde winters. I'm Richard, ride with ya, master teacher, create masters, Clyde winters. Give respect to the elder, Clyde winters. I telling somebody out there living for me. Yeah, I told you somebody out there looking for me. I think there's somebody out there looking for me. I think there's somebody out there looking for me.
We have to live by God. We have to live by God. I have not done wrong. I have not robbed. I have not stolen. I have not drank. I have not told lies. I have not stolen food. I was not stolen. I have not fornicated with the fornicator. I have not caused anyone to weep. I have not dissembled. I have not transgressed. I have not discussed secrets. I have brought no lawsuits. I am not wrong. I am not struck kill. I am not transgressed the law. I have not been hunted. Except when I'm talking about on the tongue. I have not made extolling. I have not bragged. I have not cursed. I have not been violent. I have not confounded truth. I have not been impatient. I have not cursed against.
Dr. Winter's legacy is a testament to the power of knowledge and the unyielding spirit of exploration. His impact is felt worldwide, as he shares and enlightens at conferences, symposiums, and collaborative projects. His voice is a beacon in the academic world, challenging, inspiring, and always educating. His journey reminds us that the quest for knowledge is never-ending, and its impact is timeless. Dr. Winters teaches us to challenge the narratives and to learn with an open mind. As he always says, B1 is not a group, it's a lineage. Let his story inspire everybody to pursue knowledge relentlessly and to always seek the truth. Now let us welcome in the grandfather of research, the Trill OG himself, the Honorable Dr. Clyde Winters.
Let the researcher do the research. Oh, no, no. I don't get a kick out of telling lies. Let the researcher do the research. Oh, no, no. Spent years studying the ties. Let the researcher do the research. Yeah. Black first, with strength we rise. Yeah, let the researcher do the research. Yeah, unite in truth and kill the lies. Let the researcher do the research. I learned to debunk my own craft. Respect is all that I had. Dr. Witches. I was sent here to finish my task, to become the greatest researcher, and that's who I am. Dr. Witches. Yeah. Na 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 na. Let the research gotta tell it lies. Let the researcher do the research. Yeah, yeah. I spent years studying the tides. Let the researcher do the research. Yeah, yeah. Black first, with strength we rise. Let the researcher do the research. Yeah, yeah. Unite in truth and kill the lies. Be one, be one, be one.
Yes, yes,
To win
yes.
this
We have
fight,
to always
we must
remain
unite.
black
Stand up
first.
for the righteous and let your skin shine bright. Be one, be one, be one, be one. Lessons whispered at night.
What up, though? What though? How's everybody doing today? Thank you for joining me on Black History Gems. Yes, it's Black History Gem, your weekly history show. This show, nobody can compete with it. This show, nobody can stand up to it because this show is about you, family. This show is about our history. We're talking about the process in which we went through an ethnogenesis. We're talking about the fact is that we have one of the greatest history that's ever been known. And the reason that we have such a great history is because the fact, in a sense, is that as foundational Black Americans, we've always been about the business. And what is the business? The business is doing research. That's why I start the show off with my video. Let the researcher do the researcher, but you can be a researcher too. Yes, you can be a researcher too. But what you have to do is that you have to decide that you want to really know the truth. In addition, you have to decide that you really, in a sense, want to be able to share the truth with the people, you know. I love the fact that many of you come and you've been with me for the last couple of years. You were with me when I was with Reverend Dr. Matthews, and now you're with me here. And I really enjoy the fact that I can be with you every week. This week we're going to talk about the crypto Muslims and the Cryto-Jews. This is I think, a very interesting topic. And the reason it's such an interesting topic is because the fact, in a sense, is that many of us take for granted the fact that we have a unique history. Yes, we have a unique history. And this history is one, in a sense, that involves our relationships with many, many people. Yes. It involves our relationship with our people. And the fact remains, in a sense, is that during slavery and even, before slavery, there's always been an interaction. We like to always think that that North America has always been isolated, but no, that's not true. The Muslims, Hebrews, and all types of people have always been coming to North America. They've always been visiting here. How you doing, Karen? What up, though? And today I really want to talk about this issue because it's something that we need to talk about. And the reason we need to talk about it is because the fact, in the sense, is that this history, this part of our history has been hidden from us. Like much of our history, people have been really sharing with us a very poignant and all aspects of our history, but no, they haven't. They didn't want us to know, in a sense, the fact that we've had interactions with people across the world for hundreds, no, thousands of years. And that's what I'm here today, and is to really talk about the crypto Jews. Yes. Please join my Patreon. It's my Patreon that provides me with the monies necessary to be able to do this research. In fact, in a sense, it was one of my Patreon members that made me decide to do this particular show that I'm sharing with you now. And so after I'm done with the presentations, I always put my slides on my Patreon. So please join my Patreon, support me. It's my Patreon that allows me to be able to buy books and download articles. Many articles that are online, the latest research is usually behind a paywall. That means, in a sense, that a paywall means that you had to pay monies to be able to read these materials. You had to pay money to be able to look at these materials. And so I really need the support of my Patreon to be able to keep up the research that I do to keep this up to date. You're on my channel, my YouTube channel. Here you can find over 400 videos on all aspects of Black history. Please visit my YouTube channel, not just to see my weekly broadcasts of Black History Gems, but join it every day, each and every day. Check out these videos that I've written on all aspects of Black history. Have your kids, look at the videos. This can help them to do their homework. It can help them to have a better understanding of who and what they are. It can help them to fight the AIDS pandemic. Yes, the AIDS pandemic. That's the culturally acquired immune identity deficiency syndrome. This is a debilitating disease. And what it is that it makes Black people lose their Black identity. And once they lose their Black identity, they're lost, You can order my books at Amazon.com. I've got books on all aspects of history, teaching, curriculum. Go visit Amazon.com. Look under books by Dr. Clyde Winters, and you can see all of my books that I've written. Buy one. No, buy two. No, buy all 50 if you wish. And you can find me on Twitter at Dr. Clyde Winters 8. History of Blacks in America. Two of my books that are going to really relate to this period is The Soul of Islam, the history of Sunni Islam in the Americas, and History of Blacks in America from Prehistory to 1877. These two books will provide you with specific information about this period of our history that I'm going to discuss with you today. And some of my other books that can help you to understand the history of Foundational Black Britons, the FBB. Get my books, Blacks in Europe, from prehistory to contemporary times, Blacks in Europe. Get this book. It's the most up-to-date book on the history of Black people in Europe. You can get my book, The World History of the Black Race. This book provides you with an overview of every historical period of Black people. And of course, my book, Manufactured Genetic Origins, The Fake Eurasian Black Migration. In this book, I discuss the history of Europe and how the earliest people to settle Europe 7,000 years ago, not 1,000, not 2,000, but 7,000 years ago. The first settlers of Europe were Black people from Africa. Get these books. Get these books so you can understand, in a sense, the history of Black people here and abroad. What is FBA? Well, I'm FBA, so I'm going to tell you what FBA is. FBA is not a group. FBA is not an organization. FBA is a lineage. Yes, a lineage. A lineage is lineal descent from an ancestor, ancestral pedigree. As a result, we are descendants of the African, Black Europeans, and Aboriginal Blacks who built these United States. Yes, we are FBA, Foundational Black Americans. You want to, in a sense, become B1. B1 is what? Black first. B1 is acknowledging your Black African ancestry and Mott, not heritage. What is B1? B1 is unity with Mott, you see. Today, we're going to talk about the Cryto-Jews and Muslims. After the Spanish defeated the Moors, people who believed and practiced Islam and Hebrewism were forced to convert to Catholicism or be murdered. In many cases, these forced converts to Catholicism only pretended to be Catholics. We call these people crypto-Moors and crypto-Sephardic Hebrews. We call them crypto because this is a person who adheres or belongs secretly to a party, sect, or other group. The Moriscos were Muslims who converted to Catholicism, and the Sephardic Jew came from Spain. The Sephardim or Hispanic Jews are a Hebrew diaspora population associated with the Iberian Peninsula. Some of these Hebrews, after the fall of Granada, migrated to Morocco and Algeria. It is interesting to note, yes, it's interesting to note that 56%, yes, 56% of the Hispanics in the New World carry the African haplotype R1. Yes. This is but again, in a sense, if you're going to try to use genetics to pinpoint the origin of people, this is almost impossible. But you can use genetics to demonstrate, ethnic affiliations. And so we can, in a sense, show this particular relationship. And this is something, in a sense, that we can that we can look forward to understanding, because this is the way that you can understand what's going on in the world. Yes, what's going on in the world is very important, because the fact, in a sense, is that discussion of the Cryto-Jews. How you doing, Victor? How you doing, House of St. Nicholas? Yes. Thank you for coming. This is a painting of the Moors leaving Iberia in 1492 AD. Iberia is the name of the peninsula that includes Spain and Portugal. And this portrait is supposed to demonstrate how in 1492, due to the wars that were coming to a conclusion in Europe between, in a sense, the Christians and the Muslims, we began to see by 1492 that the Muslims, they evacuated the Iberian Peninsula. They left Spain and Portugal and began to return to Africa. These brothers, in a sense, as they left Europe, they had a very important role in the rise of European civilization. It was these people, in a sense, that translated many of the ancient, Greco-Roman documents. They're credited with all that we know about the philosophers, the so-called great European philosophers, Greco-Roman philosophers. They were mainly, in a sense, their works were originally translated into the Arabic by Black people, by these Moors, and these Moors, in a sense, not only translate these documents, but they spread across Europe knowledge about these documents. This is very important, people take for granted the fact and the great role that Black people have played in world civilization. And that's why we want to set the record straight today. So when the brother looks into a mirror, you not only, in a sense, see your present. Yes, you not only see your present, you can also, in a sense, when you're looking in the mirror, when you're really viewing who and what you are, you can see our ancestry. You can see our nationalities. You can see, in a sense, our past. And this past can also tell us much about the future and who we can become. I've written a book on the Muslims in America. It's called The Soul of Islam, The History of Sunni Islam in the Americas. Check that book out so you can find out even more about the Muslims that lived here in North America. Some foundational Black Americans claim they are descendants of crypto-Sephardic Hebrews or crypto-Moors. The ancestors of these groups came from Moorish Spain. Both of these groups came to Iberia from Africa, beginning with the Sanhaja Berbers of Senegal in AD 711 AD. Yes, 711. That means, in a sense, that the Moors had ruled many parts of Europe for almost 1,000 years. Yes, from 711 to 1492, the dominant political, intellectual group in Europe was Black Moors. Many of the Protestants, the Huguenots, and Moriscos, or Sephardic Hebrews, were descendants of these Black people. Crypto-Hebrews and Moors. Many Crypto-Hebrews and Moors migrated from Spain to France, the Dutch Republic, and England. The Protestant governments in these countries knew of their non-Protestant heritage, but they allowed them to live in peace if their identities remained secret or they bribed officials. Some of these Crypto-Hebrews and Moors were privateers and map makers. For example, E.C. Hirschman and D.N. Yates in Jews and Muslims in British Colonial America claims that Sir Francis Drake, yes, Sir Francis Drake, and John Hawkins of the United Kingdom were crypto Moors. Yes. Many of these early European explorers, they were in a sense crypto Moors. They would have been black like you, black like me, but they may have been a little bit more lighter than me, But again, in a sense, they were of African ancestry or black ancestry, black European ancestry. The Iberian Hebrews came from Africa. They had fled west to North Africa after the Hebrews were defeated by the Assyrians, and most Hebrews were taken into captivity to Assyria. The majority of crypto-Sephardic Hebrews who fled Europe and settled in the United States had businesses. For example, crypto-Jews, Moors, and crypto-Muslims often controlled the maritime trade in many European and American ports. Yes, they controlled the maritime trade. Some of these Hebrews pretended to be Christians and made their names look more Anglo. Most of these Hebrews and Moriscos married Caucasian women, and over time were integrated into the dominant white society. And, although they had maybe an origin that would have been phenotypically black or African, by through intermarriage, many of them over time, in a sense, began to, just look like a regular Caucasians. But again, in a sense, let's look at these people. Because many of these people today that live in outside of North America and even in North America, many of them are Latinos. But what is the origin of the Latino people? They're very diverse. When you look at the Latino people, you find, in a sense, that that the Latino people are a composite of many different groups. The origin of Latino people is rooted in the history of the Americas, European colonization, and the transatlantic slave trade. Latino, quote unquote, refers to individuals with cultural ties to Latin America, where Romance languages are predominantly spoken. Yes. The Americas were originally inhabited by indigenous people with diverse civilizations, like the Aztecs, the Choctaw, the Cherokee, the Cree, the Maya, the Inca, and the Taino. These cultures laid the foundation for linguistic, spiritual, and cultural practices in Latin America. In the 15th and 16th centuries, European colonizers, primarily Spanish and Portuguese, arrived in the Americas, leading to mestizaje, mestizos. Mixing of indigenous people became the mestizos. European culture, Catholicism, and languages became dominant among the mestizo people. Enslaved Africans were forcibly brought to the Americas, contributing to the cultural, racial, and genetic diversity of Latin people. African traditions influenced the music, the dance, religion, the cuisine, especially in Brazil, Cuba, and Colombia. But we take for granted, in a sense, that we like to always think of maybe the Aboriginal people as eating a lot of bush meat and stuff like that. But many of our dances, music, and foods also came from our Aboriginal ancestors. So don't just think everything had to come directly from Africa or had to come via Europe to North America. Our indigenous ancestors, the Aboriginals, who were black, many of them, that the black Aboriginals, they also had their own cuisine, their own culture, their own way of life. In the 19th and 20th centuries, immigrants from Asia, Chinese, Japanese, Indians, and Europe, Italians, Germans, further diversified the Latin American population. Yes. That's why today, in a sense, you will find many so-called Chicanos, or people, in a sense, who live in Spanish communities who, they often claim descent from the Indians, but no, they're an amalgamation. They're an amalgamation of black, African, and the red Indians that lived in the Americas, and they evolved into what we call the Chicanos today. Latin America became a cultural mosaic, blending indigenous, European, African, and other influences. This created the rich traditions, languages, and identities associated with Latino people today. Hispanic America is the Spanish-speaking countries like Mexico, Colombia, and Argentina, Brazil, and Portuguese-speaking with indigenous African and European heritages. We also have French-speaking regions like Haiti and French Guyana. Latino people are not a single ethnicity or race, but a diverse group with varying ancestries. Some Latinos have an indigenous ancestry, others have a European ancestry, and still others definitely have an African ancestry. And then they have Asians. Yes, yes, many Asians, have migrated over here to this country, and in fact, they there's evidence that maybe the Chinese had early settled parts of California on down to different parts of Mexico and South America. So there was an Asian influence, and naturally there was a Middle Eastern influence. And this Middle Eastern influence, it goes back, hundreds of years, because we know that it was the Moors who gave Columbus the information that made him decide to so-called discover the New World, which wasn't really a new world. It was an old world. It was a new world of Europeans, but it was an old world to the Muslims and African people and other people who lived in the Middle East who knew about this continent. They knew about the Americas, and they had even books and maps that talked about this place. Yes, yes. So Columbus didn't really discover anything. It was known. It was just not known by Caucasian people. This multifaceted history shapes the shared and diverse cultural identity of the people who live in the Latinos. Here's a picture of Portugal. Look at this picture. Look at this picture. You see? This is a picture of some of the leading cities in Portugal. Look at all these black people. But you don't see them looking as slaves. You don't see them looking poor. Many of them are even you can see many of them were elites. As a result of blacks ruling Iberia or Spain for over 800 years, there were numerous blacks in Portugal and Spain. Here's a street scene from Lisbon. Yeah, Lisbon, Portugal. Note the black Portuguese who were in many cases elites, while other black Portuguese were commoners. You can see the elites wearing horses, riding horses. You can see one of the elites in the front on his horse. He has a crest on his cloak that he's wearing. So you can see that Portugal was much more diverse. Although today, if you go to Portugal, you'll say, aha, these are nothing but European or Caucasian people. This is how Portugal looked, 800 years ago. Look at the architecture. You can see that the architecture, even some of the houses, you can see how they were built, and you can see that many of them resemble Moorish architecture, because the fact, in a sense, is that there was this integration of their Moorish heritage or African heritage among, in a sense, the people who lived in Lisbon. Lisbon is the capital city of Portugal, for those of you who didn't know their geography. But again, this is a street scene. So this is how Lisbon looked 800 years ago. Just think about that. Just think about that, and think about if you go to Portugal today. I mean, if you saw any black people there, they would be definitely immigrants, and they would be they wouldn't even represent 0.5% in Portugal. But back in the day, Portugal was basically a black place. Here's one of the pictures of one of the elites, and look, here's an elite riding a horse, and then you can see other blacks. This is from this painting, and then you can see a white beggar. If you look on the left-hand side of the man on the horse, you can see a white beggar, in a sense, someone out there begging in the street. So that can show you, in a sense, that today, although we think of black people, African people as beggars, black people, African people as being, beneath Europeans, you can see that this hasn't always been the case. You see, it hasn't always been the case. And see, family, that's why you're here. That's why you're here at Black History Gems, to get this history, to learn these truths. Here's a continuation of this Portuguese street scene. You can see the mixtures of people. You can see the commoners. Hell, this wasn't, we're not talking about slaves. This is Lesbian, And this is how it was. But it's just sometimes it's so interesting how these black people over time, through wars and through immigration and through, in a sense, through recruitment of of, of white people from the Caucasus Mountains to serve as mercenaries. After a while, had a black minority, or after a while, in a sense, didn't even have really that many black people. You see, and so this shows how quickly things can change when you give up your identity. And it was a colorblind society, I guess. I guess because they didn't really look down on black people, because the rulers and the ruled were all black. But it's still, in a sense, interesting how people began, in a sense, to want to give up on their black identity and marry Europeans. Benjamin Franklin in 1751. He warned the America. He's warned America because, let me read what he said. Benjamin Franklin, circa 1751, warned about German immigrants as sons of Africa and their swarthy complexion, which was an affront to the purely white people who originally settled America. Think about that. That the Germans who as the Nazis are recognized as the most racist people on the planet, were originally seen as being swarthy or black as late as 1751. Why should Pennsylvania, Benjamin Franklin wrote, founded by the English, become a colony of aliens who will shortly be so numerous as to Germanize us instead of our anglicizing them, and will never adopt our language or customs any more than they can acquire our complexion. Think about that, complexion. Which leads me to one remark, that the number of purely white people in the world is proportionally very small. All Africa is black or tawny. Asia chiefly tawny. America, exclusive of the newcomers, woefully so. And in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion, as are the Germans also. The Saxons only would be considered white. Think about that. Over there on the right-hand side, you can see a Hessian or a German soldier. Yes. As late as 1751, most of the Europeans were still black. It's something to think about, isn't it? Here's another street scene in colonial America. You see, and then you say, aha, look at this. Are these slaves? Are these, in a sense, are these black people slaves? Or are they just commoners? I mean, who can tell? You see? Who can tell? Because what we notice, what we recognize is that black people were integrated into the economy, where they were integrated into the societies. Because the fact, in the sense, is that these people that we're looking at, we wouldn't be considering them to be Africans. These would have been Europeans. Yes, black Europeans. See? Working alongside white Europeans. Yes. John Mackey was a spy of King. Was a spy on the Jacobites. John Mackey, in Memoirs of the Secret Services of John Mackey, 1733, tells us about his monitoring of the Jacobites. Yes, it's when we read about the Jacobites that we can find these black people that were the predominant group in Europe at that time. In the Memoirs, John Mackay describes the complexion of the Jacobite leaders. In his writing, Mackay makes it clear that Charles Seymour, Duke of Somerset, Sidney Godolphin, Lord Treasurer of England, Daniel Finch, Secretary of State, the Earl of Nottingham, John Hose, Duke of Newcastle, Charles Lennox, Duke of Richmond, son of King Charles II, and his brother Charles, the Beauclerk, Duke of St. Albans, were all described as having very black complexions. Yes. They were described as having very black complexions. Or black and ruddy, to name a few of the Jacobites. Other Jacobites were described as having a brown complexion. So again, as you can see, these people, they were talking about these Europeans, these royals. These were black people like you, black people like me, black people like us. King William, when he came to power through the support of the parliamentary opposition to King James, William was a prominent soldier that was married to the king's daughter, Mary. He was also a Protestant. They wanted to get rid of the Catholics, you see. And see, many of the Jacobites, because of the fact in the sense that they were having trouble in Europe because of their, as we began to see the spread of Protestantism, many of these Jacobites came to the United States. Some were Baradanacs or blacks. Baradenac is just a name of the British people. The Parliament passed the Bill of Rights around this time. This law made it against the law for the King of England to come back into power. King James VI of Scotland was King James III of England. His son was, and his son was James Francis Edward Stuart. He was the Jacobite prince of King James III. Here you can see, in a sense, the Jacobite prince, King James III. Look at that, look at that afro. Look at the wig. It's kind of interesting, I think, that, back in the day, a lot of the brothers liked a lot of long hair. But this is the Jacobite prince. And this painting goes back to 1566. And, you can find out more about this in my book, The History of Blacks in America from Prehistory to 1877. Get that book if you want to find out more about the Jacobites and King James. In Memoirs of the Secret Society of John Mackay, Esquire, we learn, in a sense, he describes all these people: Duke of Richmond, black complexion, John Lord of Sumner, and all these different people, that he was able, in a sense, to describe their complexions. So that's why, if you really want to find out and look at the diverse, complexions and phenotype of the various Europeans, especially in Britain, get this book, Memoirs of the Secret Service of John Mackay. This book can tell you more about it. Here we can see that many of them, in a sense, many of the Jacobites, they left, and they were ran out of Britain. And we can see on many of the ship manifests, they list their names and they even list their complexions. You can. To me, they always say that people wasn't so race conscious back in the day, but they must have was pretty race conscious, because why do they always want to list their? They had to always list their, in a sense. Seems like they were always listing their various complexions. To me, if they're listing their complexions, must have been some racism around here. And here's some of the rebel prisoners we see: Robert Adam, brown, smooth face; William Bell, black curly hair, strong made; Douglas Campbell, brown complexion, go down, fierce and dry, moral, Grant. And, you can see brown, black. Then we can see some of the Scottish Highlanders. George Samuel, he was brown. James Donald, brown. Andrew Matthew, dark complexion. William Jackson, brown and lusty. Donald MacDonald, swarthy. William Ross, ruddy. Duncan Campbell, dark complexion. Again, in a sense, you can see that although many of these people, when you see their paintings today, they paint them as looking white. In the descriptions that we find of the Jacobites, and when we read the real books, we see that they weren't white. The same thing with Queen Elizabeth and others. Every day as people began to, as people go and find the sources, the source books about many of the Europeans, we begin to see that they weren't, they phenotypically, they weren't, Caucasians like the people, the king and queen of King Charles today of England. They were black people like you, black people like us. But later, in a sense, they went back and repainted a lot of the paintings of a lot of these people to make them appear as Caucasian. I guess to deceive the world. They was also many black Dutchmen. Here's the poet playwright John Voss, and here's Anthony van Leeuwenhoek. So it was all type of here's some more black Dutchmen and other people. So you can see there's a lot of black people back in the day. Many black Dutchmen came to the United States in 1603. Matthew de Costa, a free black explorer, guided the French through parts of Canada and to what is now New York State. John Rodriguez was a free black sailor working for the Dutch merchants. In 1612, he was left behind on Manhattan Island, and he established trade with the local native population. And he was able, in a sense, to get this trade established, and also later, in a sense, to get these goods from in a sense, the Aboriginal people and sell it to Europe. So you can see that, black people played a great role. I mean, today, because of the fact, in the sense that people want to always act as though Europeans have always been the dominant group and that the white man is right, then they kind of change things. But see, the basic problem is that during the 100-Year War, the 30-Year War, many of these black elites were killing each other off. And as these black elites killed each other off, they began to bring in mercenaries from the Caucasus Mountains and other places in Europe. And that's how many of the population became the shift from a black or dark population to a light and soon white population. So it came as a result of this of these wars that they have. Here's some more blacks in New Amsterdam. Black Englishmen were in Jamestown even before the first slave trade. They always tell you that in 1619, the first blacks came to America. Nah, it was already black people in Jamestown in 1619. We can see this, on some of the records. So when those African slaves were brought to Jamestown, there was already black people living in Jamestown. You see, and but again, like I said, is that a lot of it is just to hide stuff, because you can like here's a painting from back in the day, colonial blacks. Note the black militiamen in the picture on the left, but most of the time they try to make it appear, and they to make history having and they want to make it look as though everything was homogenized. Everybody was just one group. That it was Europeans ruling everything. That it was the white Americans that created all this beauty in this great country. So they had to keep that lying. So that's what it's about, is lying. You see. In summary, the Jamestown census and life of John Phillips proves that there were black Englishmen in the American colonies before the arrival of slaves in 1619. The most famous Afro-American was Matthias de Souza, and he was in a sense a person who built, he came from Britain, and he was a very well-known person in Maryland. There's other black people too, and many of these people, in a sense, some were free, but many were in indentured service. Here we can see some of the black elites who were living in some of the northern cities. These weren't slaves. So you got to get it out. I hope that you can get it out of your mind, you see. You had to, in a sense, stop just picturing all of the early Americans as just being, in a sense, Caucasians. There were many black people who were already here in the Americas, and they weren't enslaved, And we could look at here's a painting of some black elites having a little party. As indentured servants, many Africans married European women, and as a result, some Afro-Americans are descendants of white women who married black indentured servants. In 1624, the first foundational black American child was born free in the English colonies, and he's supposed to be called William Tucker. He was baptized in Virginia. But again, like I said, it's very complicated, because many of the so-called early Europeans who you and me were taught were white. They weren't white. They were black people and stuff. You see. Many black Europeans went to Canada after the American Revolution. Yes, after the American Revolution, many black people fled to Canada because they were promised freedom if they fought with the British. It was some black people that fought on the American Revolution side, but many of them, in a sense, they were already free, and they didn't really a lot of times, they promised to make them free, but most time, unless they sided with the British during the Revolutionary War, they didn't obtain their freedom, And many of these black soldiers who fought on the side of the British at the end of the Revolutionary War, they went up to Canada, and many of them remained in Canada. Some came back later, after the end of slavery, but it was a complicated affair. But as you can see, there were many free blacks in the colonial New England. Some of these free blacks, they had 13,059 in New England. It was 13,059 in 1790. But it's very important to understand in a sense is that is that many of these so-called free Negroes, many of these so-called free Negroes, they would not have been descendants of slaves. We hear a lot about manumission and people freeing their slaves. No, most of the time people didn't free their slaves. They needed that labor. So a lot of times, in a sense, many of these so-called free people would have been Black Indians and stuff, not necessarily people who had been freed. Few Blacks of direct European heritage live in the United States today, identify as foundational Black Americans. These descendants of free European Blacks probably went to Canada after the Revolutionary War. Those Europeans who remained in the United States, lived in New England, probably married whites, and over time, in a sense, their complexions would have changed, and they could just go about being white. Yes, here we can see a couple of slave people in New Orleans. This is Isaac and Rosa, and as you can see, Rosa, hey, if she wouldn't have been owned by anybody, they would have thought of her as just a normal little white child, and she could have grown up in a sense as a white person. That's why one of the greatest fears that white people had was Black people passing for white, because of the fact, in a sense, that there were so many octoroons and other, octoroon was the name of real light-skinned Black people who were enslaved. You see, we will never be able to account for the ancestry of the foundational Black Americans who came from Europe, who were free, because over time, most of them became whites. For example, in 1850, while 83 out of every 1,000 slaves was a mixed race, 581 out of every 1,000 free foundational Black Americans, or 58%, were mulattoes. Given the evident high rate of intermarriage between Blacks and whites in the North, free foundational Black Americans of European descent could have easily numbered 20%. It is obvious that the vast majority of the foundational Black American freemen in New England would have been Black Europeans. Most of these Blacks lived in New England and over time joined the white race. This is obvious if you look at the number of mulattoes that were free Blacks, you see. So again, in a sense, we find this over time. Here's a Black woman and her mulatto child. So as you can see, there's a lot of intermarriage, that took place. For example, in 1850, while 83 out of every 1,000 slaves was a mixed race, 581 out of every 1,000 free Afro-Americans were mulattoes. So you can see there's a lot of people. So a lot of people, were passing for white. I mean, it's just like if you look at this picture. Here you can see this woman, this Black woman. She's got a feather in her hair because this picture is to represent how, in a sense, they were Aboriginals. They could have been Indians. They could have been anybody. But over time, in a sense, they would have been, because of the fact that they were passing, they would have been accepted as in a sense, the average American, you see. And this is something that we had to keep into account, because the fact is that all the Black people that were in the United States were not slaves. In summary, the vast majority of Black Europeans came to America as chattel slaves of Irish and Scottish descent. These slaves, numbering in the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, worked on rice and tobacco plantations in the South. These Black Europeans over time were absorbed in the descendants of enslaved foundational Black Americans who were freed with the 14th Amendment. Other Black Europeans from Britain, Germany, Norway, Spain came to the USA as freemen or indentured slaves. Other Black Europeans came here as Huguenots, Crypto-Moors, and Sephardic Hebrews. Some of these Blacks remained Afro-American, while most married Caucasian women, and over time, they passed for white and were absorbed in the dominant population. That's why it's so many people today. They've been passed from white for hundreds of years. So you wouldn't even know. But in a sense, when you look at the documentation, when you read the books, you start to see that many people who we've assumed to have been white people, they weren't white. They were really Black people. You can find out more about the Black European ancestors of Afro-Americans in my book, History of the Blacks in America, from Prehistory to 1877. In this book, you will discover the history of the trade of Blacks who form the Afro-American population today. You had to remember, in a sense, is that is that we are the result of a tripartite origin. Yes, tripartite. We're descendants of the Aboriginal blacks, the European blacks, and the sub-Saharan blacks who all made it over these in these United States and made the people today that we call foundational black Americans, you know. If you want to find out more about blacks in Europe and the world history of black people, get my book, From Prehistory to Contemporary Times, Blacks in Europe. Get my book, The World History of the Black Race. This is a survey book that you could use in any course. I mean, every black person should have this book, and also my book on the history of blacks in America. But they should have this book, The World History of the Black Race. Every black person should have a copy of that book in their home. They should have it on their table, you know, because it's a big book, and it's a book in a sense that your children and you can use to find out more about your history. And then you can find out more about black people in Europe in my book, Manufactured Genetic Origins, The Fake Eurasian Black Migration, where I go back 7,000 years to talk about the buildup of black Europeans. You know, again, please join my Patreon. It's you. It's the members of my Patreon that allow me to be able to do this presentation every week. This presentation, like all of my other presentations, are going to be in my Patreon account. You see, so you can go to my Patreon to see the slides. Join my Patreon. Support me. Yes, I need your support. It's you who allow me to do Black History Gems every week. Thank you for your support. Thank you. Don't forget, join my Patreon and get my books, History of Blacks in America from Prehistory to 1877. And also get my book, The Soul of Islam. This is these books, in a sense, are very important books. And these books, in a sense, can help you to know more and more about yourself. You know, it's very important, you know. And, you know, again, I'd like to thank you guys for joining me. Carla Wilson, Karen Vincent. Thanks, Karen. What up, though? The House of St. Nicholas. You know, thank you guys for joining me today, because I've enjoyed our discussion. And I've enjoyed, in a sense, discussing with you who and what we are, because, see, we are great people, you know. Please support my Patreon, and always understand, in a sense, is that, you know, that you are not alone, you see. I've been out here to try to give you the information that can help you to know who you are, what you are, and our future, you see. But you can also, in a sense, take courses on our Black history to learn about who and what we are.
Supplemental learning for your mini. But you can learn too. Don't send your mini into the belly of the beast unarmed. Courses, practical math, language, the code, our story, and more. An institution founded by us, dedicated to us and our fight for justice. Here you will learn ways to combat the system using the same information they are trying to keep away from you. Welcome to FBA Sunday School.
What's up, everybody? It's Eve. Follow me on Twitter and YouTube for space recordings and special live programs. 2024, we're doing things a little different if you haven't peeped game by now. So yeah, this is your chance. You can do it now if you want. hit the bell here on YouTube at JustEveB, or find me on X at Justice4 Us. That's JUSTICE 4 JUST_US. And if you feel so inclined, support my channel and the work we do over here. The Cash App and Patreon links are in the description. Black first.
Atlantis in Mexico. Atlantis in Mexico. Atlantis in Mexico. Atlantis in Mexico. Time travel in a book. Go far in a book. When is the last time you spent bread on a book? Knowledge given in a book. Benefit from a book. Create a movie from a book. Create animation from a book. Atlantis in Mexico. Atlantis in Mexico. Mexico.
Parents, looking for a story that would not only captivate your little one's imagination, but would also teach valuable lessons. The Bloom, bedtime story for the young at heart, takes your child on a magical journey to ancient Kemet, where the goddess Sister Andito brings life, love, and healing. Through this enchanting tale, your child will learn the importance of nature, compassion, and positivity, all while discovering the rich history of Kemet. It's a story that inspires self-mastery and love for the world around them, making it the perfect bedtime read for little dreamers. Available on Amazon now, The Bloom not only nurtures young minds, but also supports the FBA community. Grab your copy right now and give your child the gift of adventure of learning. Order The Bloom today on Amazon. Thank you. Hotel.
Free your mind, let it go to the top, drop it to the floor. Hey, energy, coming like whoa. Spring water, let it go. Free your mind, let it go. Tap in, go, let it know. Hey, let it know. Let it know. Energy, coming like whoa. Spring water, let it go. Free your mind, let it go to the top, drop it to the floor. Energy, coming like whoa. Tap in, go, let it know. Hey, she told me go and put it in her heart. I told her I don't wanna break it all apart. Let me be a night light in the dark. Hey, my nigga shine bright with the art. Gemini 2 time, know it's hard. Got the stars on the line with the charts. Big dog, so I gotta leave a mark. Free your mind, cause I'm all that smart. Hey, energy, got my light walk. Spring water, how did that grow? Free your mind, let it go. To the top, drop it to the floor. Hey, energy, got my light walk. Spring water, how did that go? Free your mind, let it go. Tap in, go, let it know. Hey, let it know.
Our identity and our culture as black foundational Americans. Yes, yes. Wars between black Indians and whites were manufactured to produce black slaves for whites. The English, the French, and the Dutch provided the Native Americans with guns, rum, and cheap goods to purchase Native American Indian slaves. Between 1670 and 1720, many black Native Americans were enslaved. The black Native Americans were sold into slavery throughout the 13 colonies, Mississippi Valley, Canada, and the British West Indies. The majority of black Native Americans sold into slavery by whites and Indians. Slave traders were the Choctaw, the Yamasee, and other Carolina tribes. Yes, yes. Many of these tribes like the Mandi, Mandinga, many of these tribes, we lost their names. And their names have been lost to history because of the fact, in a sense, that when the European came, as he conquered these black Indians, he just made them slaves. And so over time, in a sense, their nations disappeared. Over time, in a sense, their history wasn't recorded. Over time, they were even able to deny that Aboriginal blacks even existed in America. They wanted to give our Aboriginal ancestors gifts. And the only problem with the gifts that they gave us was that often these blankets that they gave us carried smallpox, yes, diseases. They also, in a sense, gave us another gift, rum, fire water. And this rum caused an addiction among us. In a sense, it led to a demand for guns because it incentivized Indian slave trading. Yes, the first slaves sold in America were Indians, black Indians, selling other black Indians to Europeans to work on their cotton, not on their cotton plantations, their tobacco plantations, their rice plantations. Yes. We sold each other over here, just like in Africa, because of the fact that we failed to understand that we are one. We should be united based upon our identity and our culture as black foundational Americans. Yes. Reparations, baby, reparations. We deserve reparations. We deserve reparations like yesterday, not just today. No, not just today. We deserve our reparations. Give us our money, baby. Cut the check.
Cut the check, black first because it's brilliant. People talk too much. Say less, remain on cold, follow the spirit. When the going gets tough, it's time for resilience. Cut the check, black first because it's brilliant. People talk too much. Say less, remain on cold, follow the spirit. When the going gets tough, it's time for
If you're not going to speak up, support the ones who do. If you're not going to speak up, support the ones who do. If you're not going to speak up, support the ones who do. If you're not going to speak up, support the ones who do. Vampires, they prey on your fears, so them not stay away. Vampires, they prey on your fears, control your atmosphere. Don't let them take your energy. Control your atmosphere. I am you, control your atmosphere. Don't let them take your energy. It's a distraction away from me. I am you and you are me. If you're not going to speak up, support the ones who do. If you're not going to speak up, support the ones who do. If you're not going to speak up, support the ones who do. If you're not going to speak up, support the ones who don't follow nobody but yourself. Don't follow. I said nobody but yourself. Don't follow nobody but yourself. Don't follow yourself. Nobody yourself. Nobody but yourself.
The only thing that can save you is be one. To fight Cage, you must stay black first.